Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. I'm very soft-spoken, so I'm very glad there's a microphone. All right, so this morning, first I'd like to share my testimony, how I got saved, and how the Lord led me to work with Native Americans in the Southwest. And then I'd like to show you a slideshow of what those ministries look like, and then open it up for question and answers if you're curious. So my name is Katie Schopf, and I am a missionary appointee with Baptist Mid-Missions to Native American ministries in the Southwest. And being an appointee, that just means I'm appointed to that field. I haven't actually gone there yet. I've visited, but I'm not there yet. So I grew up here in Washington State. I'm a true Washingtonian. However, I grew up on the other side. I grew up in Western Washington near Seattle. It's a little bit different than here. My dad is a pastor, and I'm one of 8 siblings. I'm in the middle, so that's a joy. You kind of just do your own thing as everybody else bothers everybody else. So both of my parents are believers, and growing up, they taught us about the Lord. But just because your parents are Christians does not make you a Christian. And I found that out very quickly. When I was about 7 to 8 years old, I was sitting in church, just like you are, and my dad was preaching, and all of a sudden, there was a part of the sermon that stuck out to me. It was on heaven and hell. And for the first time, I realized I was not going to heaven, and I was going to be separated from God, and I didn't want that. You see, in the Bible, it says, "For all have sinned and have fallen short of the glory of God." I had personally sinned against God. I had lied. That's a sin. And it says in the Bible that the wages of sin is death. So what I had earned for my sins is death, eternal separation from God. But there's also good news in the Bible, and it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, not die, but have eternal life." And so right there in that pew, I prayed in my heart, I put my trust in God, and he saved me. So fast forward to college, big leap. I went to a small Bible college in Arizona, and my time there, I met a guy named Joey. Now, Joey was this tall, lanky fellow, always funny, always awkward. He was Italian, loved the Lord, and loved to help other people. Joey and I became very good friends. Every year, a group from my college would take a trip to the Grand Canyon. It was about an hour or 2 from us. Anyone who wanted to could go on this hike. And for my first 2 years, I wasn't interested. I wasn't a huge hiker at that time. But my 3rd year, I decided, okay, I'll go. And Joey was over the moon. We finally got to go together. So we traveled with our group to the Grand Canyon, camped overnight, and early the next morning, Joey and part of our group left to hike down to the bottom of the canyon, while I stayed with the rest of our group at the top rim and just was a tourist. Well, hours later, we received a phone call, and 3 of the guys from our hiking group had gone missing in the river in the bottom of the canyon, and Joey, my friend, was one of them. He's a believer, and the other 2 guys were professing believers, all young guys, all healthy, but it was God's will to take all of them home to heaven. So all 3 of them drowned in the Colorado River. And it was one of the hardest times in my life. But because there was no one else I could turn to who understood, I turned to God, and I experienced his love and comfort in a way that I never had before. Joey's parents were missionaries in New Mexico, so we had his funeral service there, and I was able to go. So after college, I moved back home with my parents and thought, I'm just going to be here for a month and on to the next big thing the Lord has for me. He's like, whoa, Katie, no. You're going to be here for a while. So months turned into years, but the Lord gave me lots of opportunities to serve at my church, teach Sunday school, do camp ministry, do VBS ministry, all in preparation for what he had for me next. So years have gone by, and a friend from my church reached out to me and said, Katie, there's a Bible camp in New Mexico that needs help this summer. And I had never heard of this camp. I had never been to this camp. And I struggled to say yes to God because I had not gone back since Joey's funeral, and I had never publicly shared in all those years what had happened at the Grand Canyon. But the Lord worked in my heart, and he helped me to say yes to going and to sharing. So in 2017, my friend and I, we went on our first mission trip to the Southwest, where we helped missionaries with Native Americans in Arizona and New Mexico. So we started with a 3-day VBS on the Navajo Reservation, and then we went to the camp to clean it up, get it ready for campers. Now remember, I had never been to this camp. This is all in the Lord's leading. So going to that camp cleanup, we went for the first time, and I talked to the missionary who was there. They've been there over 25 years. Come to find out, Joey had gone there as a child, growing up. And so we did our camp cleanup, and then we went back to Arizona, picked up kids, brought them to the camp. So the Lord directed me to this camp. I had never been there, never heard of it, where Joey had gone growing up, where I got to share for the first time what had happened at the canyon, where I got to share God's love with kids that Joey would have grown up with, Native American kids. And that was all the Lord. I didn't put any of that together. And through that, he brought healing, and I fell in love with the kids. Since that first trip, God has given me 4 other times to go back and help with the summer ministries, and I've really come to love the kids. Many of them, most of them, come from broken homes, and they need someone there to love them and to show them the way. So in 2023, the Lord laid a burden on my heart. It wasn't just, I'll go and help these kids, I'll go and love them. It was different because all of a sudden I saw their need, and God showed me the field was white for harvest. They just needed someone to tell them the truth. But the laborers were few. With Baptism and Missions, the mission agency I'm with, there are only 5 missionaries in all of the U.S., in all of Canada, to Native Americans. Only 5. And all 5 of them are within a decade of retiring. And that was really heavy on my heart. So I started to pray that God would send more laborers. It's a good thing to pray. You never know when God is going to intercept that prayer. And when I was praying that prayer, I realized I'm praying for other people to go, but I could go. I could be a laborer. So I prayed if it was God's will that he would send me. So when I returned home from that trip, the Lord continued to show me, yes, it's my will that you go. I mean, he has worked in amazing ways, and I'm just along for the ride. So as a full-time missionary to Native Americans, I will be working with the Mission Church on the camp property, and I will be working with children's ministries, women's ministries. I'll be helping with camp ministry and VBS ministries, and I'll be reaching out to the community, sharing the gospel, discipling the saved. So now I'd like to show you a slideshow of what those ministries look like, all right? All right, so you all know I'm with Baptism and Missions. I'm going to New Mexico, Vanderwagen, New Mexico. It's just south of Gallup. This is the missionary team I'll be working with. They've been there over 25 years, Joe and Don Lee. Where is New Mexico? Okay, now I know you probably all know this, but I've actually gotten people who wonder if I'm going to Mexico. I'm like, no, I'm staying in the States. I will be in the southwest region of the United States. It does border Mexico, so there is a heavy Spanish population. So New Mexico is known as the land of enchantment. It is a beautiful place, and I've only seen a tiny part of it. I'm looking forward to exploring. It's a land of interesting things. You have a lot of cactus. You have roadrunners. You have chili peppers, which I am not a spicy eating person, so I will have to get used to that. It's a land of diverse terrain. It has desert. It has mountain. It has plateaus. It has barren areas. So it is home to many from the largest tribe in the U.S., and that is the Navajo tribe. So these are all Navajo people. They are very, very sweet people. They're generous. They would give you anything that they have if they knew you wanted it. But they are very poor and they are very lost. No, it's okay. I was like, so some of the facts about the Navajo and the Navajo Reservation. With the Navajo, there are nearly 400,000. So again, it is the largest tribe in the U.S. They also have the largest reservation land in the U.S. This land goes across 3 different states, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. They have their own president, their own attorney general, their own police, their own laws. But many who live on the reservation live in third world country poverty. Many do not have running water or indoor plumbing. So I was actually watching something the other day to kind of get a feel for what that looked like. So Americans typically use 80 to 100 gallons of water per day. Those who live on the reservation who do not have the indoor plumbing, indoor running water, they have to use only 7 gallons because they have to travel to the wells, they fill their tanks, and then they have to be very careful with their water. So there's a lot of poverty. So the Navajo people are in desperate need of Jesus Christ. So what has happened is over the years, many missionaries have gone to the Navajo and tried to convert them to their religions. This has resulted in some converts, but also they've left pieces of these religions. So what some of the Navajos do is they take pieces of Mormonism, Catholicism, and their own animistic beliefs, and they put them together and they live in fear and confusion because they don't have the truth. Some other problems, alcohol, drugs, and abuse are very common. Probably every year I talk to kids who have a lot of struggles in their homes with alcohol abuse. Drugs has actually become kind of a newer problem since I first started going in 2017. It has really started to take over. So a lot of the kids come from broken homes. Some of the kids come to the camp. Even one year we had a couple siblings come to the camp and their father was just put in prison, or they had to go to a different home when they left camp. Just these kind of things in the kids' lives. So living without true hope, many turn to suicide. This is very common on the reservation with the Native American people. Kids who come to camp, I have talked to multiple kids who they knew someone who committed suicide, someone in their family, or they had tried to commit suicide. So that is another problem. So how do we reach Native Americans for the Lord in New Mexico? There you go. So this is the church on the camp property. It's a mission church, meaning there's not a Native pastor yet. The missionary couple who are there, Pastor Joe is the pastor temporarily until the Lord brings a Native pastor. So this is the church that I will also be involved with. We have Sunday services, prayer meeting. I'll be helping teaching Sunday school. And it's primarily Navajo that come. So we have Sunday school classes. We're trying to get some youth nights started. We also, throughout the week, we have men's and women's Bible studies. During the summer, we have summer Bible camp. That is one of the ministries that I have been involved with and have really come to love. And then also throughout the year, there's outreach events. There's an Easter service, harvest party, Christmas program, just to keep in touch with the community. And it's a great way. It's a great way to bring people from the community and introduce them to the church, to the people, right? So one of the things that I'll be working on is building relationships with the Native Americans. They're sweet, they're kind, they're friendly, but they need to know that they can trust you. And so over the years, the Lord has given me opportunity to build relationships. These 2 girls are teenagers now, but when I first started going, they were little girls that started coming to the camp. And now they're teenagers and working, but they want to come back and be counselors at the camp. So that would be really, really great. And then the lady on the right-hand side, she's been coming to the VBS in Arizona for many years. As far as I know, she doesn't know the Lord, but she has heard the gospel over and over. So I've gotten to know her, and I text her once in a while now, and so it's a process. So God is working in hearts and saving Native Americans. No one is beyond God's reach. So these are some of the kids who have come to know the Lord. You have Faith, Shania, Simon and Vivian, Andrea. So these kids come from broken homes. Two of them come from homes with suicide. Another one, her dad is no longer there, and as soon as she got saved, I had the privilege of seeing her come to know the Lord. As soon as she got saved, she started to cry. I said, what's wrong? She's like, I'm not going to see my dad, am I? Because he already died, and he was not a Christian. And that was a tough conversation, but she had trusted in the Lord. Another one, the two little girls, their dad had just gotten out of prison when they came to camp, and they came with one big suitcase, but when they opened it, there was hardly anything in there. So these kids come from a lot of hardship, but they come, they're loved, we share the gospel with them, and God works in their hearts. So my question to you, would you partner with me in reaching Native Americans for the Lord? I know not everyone can help financially, but I need people to be praying. We need more people to come and help with these ministries. So I would ask that you would pray for more laborers. Pray for me as I'm on deputation to be a humble vessel that God can use. Also, I have people who help me financially every month because I will have cost of living just like anybody else. I will be living on a plateau above 7,000 feet away from town, working full-time in people's lives. And so I will have costs just like anybody else, groceries, gas, those kind of things. Also, we love to have people come and help us with mission trips. We have people all over the country who just volunteer their time, youth groups, singles, couples. We have one lady, she's almost 80. She just comes and she chops vegetables and she talks to the kids. So anyone can help. So I just like to leave you with this verse. This is the verse that the Lord used in my heart. And I would ask that you pray this prayer. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. So I would just ask that you please pray for more laborers to come and help with Native American ministries. All right, so with that, I'd like to open up if anybody has any questions, anything you're curious about, anything that didn't make sense, anything you've ever wanted to know that I might be able to answer. It depends on the generation. So the older the generation, it's primarily Navajo. The kind of the middle generation, they speak Navajo and English, depending on who they're around. And then the kids, they mainly speak English, but the president of the Navajo Nation just put a bill into effect where the kids have to learn Navajo now. So all of them will be speaking Navajo, but there is English as well. So I hope to learn Navajo, so there's no divide. Yes. So on my table, there's a Navajo English Bible. So you can take a look at that. It's very different, especially the translation. You go from one language to the next, and it's very different. Yes. Anybody else? So when I was at Baptist Missions for a training seminar last year, they made an estimate budget for me, cost of living per month, based on the missionaries who already live there. So what I need to raise is 100% of that estimate per month to be able to go. So I'm at 37%. So, anybody else? Mhm. That's a good question. You really need to just listen and be patient. Sometimes when I first started going, I was on fire to see them come to know the Lord, and I wanted them to make a decision. But I quickly learned that they would make decisions because they wanted to please you. So one of the things will just be patience in working in their lives and letting them know I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving like everybody else. I'm here to stay, and I love you, and just wait for the Lord to bring them to that point. Some of these kids, 2 times already, a child has come to the camp. I've talked to them about the gospel, but they didn't get saved that year. Then they went home, and the Lord helped me to pray for them for that year. They came back to camp, and the Lord brought them to himself. So sometimes often it's just patience. So really not being pushy. When you're pushy, it can be a false decision, really. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things. I haven't run into too many things. It's interesting how the Lord made me, because I'm a quiet and very private person, and so are they. And I love kids. I love working with kids who come from broken homes. I guess probably a personality maybe difference if somebody came in who were completely opposite personalities of them. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah. No, they like to tease me once in a while, yes, and so it'll be a give and take. They have a really good sense of humor. They like to tease a lot, so they know that they are Navajo. They know that I am not Navajo, and so they're still willing to include me in their lives. So that's good. Yeah. Anybody else? I would say both. It depends where you are on the reservation. So a lot of them are actually very patriotic. You have multiple ones who have served in the U.S. military and are veterans. But you also have some of the older ones who remember things that were very hard, that were wrong, right? So they are not as trusting towards white people. And they might still think of Christianity as a white person's religion. So that's another thing with the generations, very different. So. I would say probably mid 60s on up. It just depends on the person, because I have also met ones that are probably in that age range that don't seem to have a problem. So it just depends. I had one guy come to the VBS one year, and he would not speak to me or the missionaries. It was interesting. I had never experienced that, but he participated. So, yeah. Anybody else? Anything you're curious? So we have 1 week of junior camp where you would have 7 to 8 on up to 11 years old. And then once they hit that middle ground, they can actually choose if they want to be in the junior camp or in the senior camp. And then the senior camp goes up through age, it's either 17 or 18. They're actually only a week at a time. So we have 1 week of junior, 1 week of senior. Lord willing, I would love to help facilitate more use of the camp property throughout the year, as far as maybe some retreats for women or for men. I mean, I wouldn't really work directly with the men, but maybe with the kids a couple times during the year, to have more contact with them, because they come to the camp and then they go home. And for some of them, that's their influence for the year. Some of them are not allowed to have Bibles in their homes. So that's the hard thing. I have tried, but usually a few months after camp, I lose contact. The kids change phones. Hopefully not because it's anything personal, but they just change phones, they change addresses, and I lose contact. So I just pray for them. These two Native women that I have been in contact, that's very unusual to be able to keep in contact this long. So, anybody else? So I'll answer that question first. So the kids, for 1 week of camp, if they can pay, it's $25. But some of them can't even pay that. And so we have sponsors all over the states who sponsor kids for the camp, and also a camp fund. And then as far as the numbers, it really varies every year. There's been some big camp years, there's been some small ones, but I've seen the Lord's hand when it's small ones, they really needed good, focused attention. With the bigger ones, we've had bigger groups come out and help. So it really, really varies. We never know. A lot of it's word of mouth. A lot of the kids are like, oh, I have a friend, or, my siblings want to come, or, so it's really varies. Anybody else? Mhm. Right. So the camp property is a very large piece of land that's owned by Baptist Missions. It's part of the checkerboard area in New Mexico. And so there's 2 houses on it. So one of the houses is where I will be living, and the other house is for the missionary couple. And then there's buildings. There's a multi-purpose building. The multi-purpose throughout the year is used for the church. And then during camp season, we use it for the chapel. So. Yes, I hope so. There's housing just down the road where you have many natives who live, but then you also have it in town. So I hope to get involved in the kids' lives. Go to their sports games. Bring them to church. Have youth events, things like that. So it is, yes, it is close enough that I can do that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that works there because, so we are technically where the property is not on the reservation, but it's close to it. So we have Zuni to the south, Navajo to the north, Hopi to the west, and so you go on to these different reservations. So I don't know how it works with the schools, like where they are, if they're on a reservation, if they're not, what the stipulations are, if the missionaries have tried, or if they just haven't had the manpower, because it's just been the 2 of them for all these years doing all these ministries. So hopefully we'll be able to start up some new ministries too. Yeah. About 20 miles. 20 miles, depending on the road conditions. Yes. All right. Anyone else? Thank you so much for listening and having me today. It's a blessing to be here, and thank you in advance for praying. I know you will pray, so thank you.